Facing life in prison for capital murder and then finding out that you're pregnant. Cravings, no baby shower, you can't hug your family. You don't know when you're gonna go home, if you're ever gonna go home. Being terrified for your life, being in labor for 24 hours, and being handcuffed to a cold hospital bed while you're in pain. That's what today's story is gonna be about. Good morning, my lovelies, my beauties, my friends. My name is Christina and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really hope that you will subscribe, stick around, take a chance on hearing some things that I have to say. And if you are a returning subscriber, y'all already know, y'all are my babies. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you are all having an amazing day. Today's story is going to be very heavy. It's going to be very serious. Today I'm introducing you to one of my very best friends. More than a friend. She's a sister and her name is Jody. I've talked to you guys about her before. If you guys watched my last day in prison video, then you heard me talk about Jody. You heard me talk about, being with her the day before I left and eating with her and her crying. You also heard that her mom is actually the one that sent me my care package. So I actually had clothes whenever I left prison and didn't have to get the donated clothes that they have. When I tell you guys I love this girl, I love her. She has a heart of gold. But even the most kindest, loving, generous people can get caught up in things like addiction or crime or stuff like that. And when I tell you guys, and I've told you this before, and I'm going to tell you again, and I'm going to tell you a million other times again, especially my little babies out there, my youngins out there, listen to Grandma Christina. Watch the company that you keep. Your friends. Yes. You are only as good as the people that you hang out with. And this story today is going to be a prime example of that. Now, please, y'all, I want you guys to find a quiet place, get all the distractions around you out, and watch this video all the way to the end. This is going to be a really crazy story, and there's going to be a lot of shocking parts. And this was so hard for my girl Jody to film, but she really wanted to. She wanted to share her story. And she's one of the strongest people that I've ever met in my life. And she's also the kindest, probably too kind, to be honest with you. So let's just get into the video and we're going to talk afterwards. Remember, watch it all the way to the end now. All right, let's go.
Hi, my name is Jody. I am very good friends with Christina. We met while we were incarcerated in Florida State Prison. When we became friends, we became sisters. She became the sister I never had. And the Christina you guys see on camera, that is Christina. She loves hard and she becomes a mama bear when somebody messes with her people. But we have definitely laughed together, cried together, argued, disagreed, but at the end we have remained friends and we love each other. We have a true sister bond and I appreciate her. I just want to tell her thank you for letting me come on here and share my story. I wasn't gonna go into a lot of details, but I feel like the only way to truly tell this story is to tell you guys the story. When I was 19 years old, I was in addiction and I was hanging out with the wrong people. March 2004, I was with some people who actually robbed the dope man, or robbed somebody they thought had dope. That person got shot and killed in the process. I actually fled the scene to try to get away. I was scared. I was terrified. I was terrified. I can't even tell you how terrified I was. And they caught up to me and told me that they would kill me if I went to the police. So I was terrified. I just watched these people do this, so I knew that they were capable of pulling the trigger on someone. So I decided that I wasn't going to go to the police, I was going to run. One of the guys that were there, we ended up on the run together. a little bit, fast forward a little bit, we ended up on the run together. And a month, I barely knew him. I only knew him for about a month. But in that situation, like, I felt like I needed somebody and he was there. So I think we needed each other. We comforted each other in that time of fear, of not knowing what future held, not knowing whether they were going to pull the trigger on us, or it's really hard to tell that story. So we'll save that story for another time, but I felt like I needed to give you a little bit of backstory of why I was on the run for a month and why I ended up with someone I barely knew. We decided that it was in the best interest to turn ourselves in. So my dad drove all the way to Ohio and drove us back to Florida to turn ourselves in. This time in my life, I was so scared. I was terrified. Like, I was fixing to turn myself in. I had indictments for first-degree murder and armed robbery. Like, I was completely terrified. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew that I needed to go and I needed to tell my side of the story because I had indictments for murder and I didn't kill anybody. So we turned ourselves in April 21st, 2004, and it was really difficult. It was a really difficult day for me because I had never been to jail, first of all. I was 19 years old. I knew that the victim's family was incarcerated as well. So I had that fear on top of, am I gonna spend life in prison? What's gonna happen to me? I can remember going back to the jail, or after we get booked in, they take you over to the main jail. I can remember them giving me like a rolled up blanket and a pillow case, because I didn't have a pillow. They didn't give you a pillow. I had a pillowcase, a towel, washcloth. I can remember the pillowcase having like hair in it. It was just so disgusting. It was just the jail that I was in. It was a very, very dirty jail. Okay, so probably about a week into being there, I got called down to the nurse's station. And when you go through intake, they give you a pregnancy test in our jail. I got called down. I can remember the nurse saying, "You're pregnant." I was like, oh my God. Like, I am fixing to spend the rest of my life in prison and I'm pregnant? Like, I can remember being so scared, just sitting there like, no, I'm pregnant. I remember when I walked back to the dorm, I was crying and everybody was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I just was crying, saying, I'm going to spend the rest, I'm not going to be able to be with my child. I'm pregnant. I'm going to spend life in prison. I just was so devastated that I was pregnant, but not because I didn't want a baby, but because of the situation I was in. I had always wanted a baby, so it was like a happy but very devastating moment for me. I spent the next month or two just really depressed, really sad, really, not knowing what the future held for me and my child. I can remember writing my co-defendant, which was the father, and him being excited. And so we kept writing each other and we kept in contact. We helped each other name the baby throughout this whole pregnancy. We were allowed to write each other. I can remember being in county jail and I would have every time the commercial would come on for Taco Bell, I would be like, oh, I need sour cream. But nobody gets sour cream in prison or in jail. I can just remember craving sour cream every time a Taco Bell commercial came on and not being able to have it. When you're going through a pregnancy in jail, or when you're going through a pregnancy period, you want to experience baby shower, decorating the baby's room, or picking out baby clothes, or all those fun things you get to do. This was my first child, so it was like I was missing out on everything that you want to do. I can remember like going down to the infirmary once a month. They didn't bring us to a real doctor, but they brought a real doctor into us. All the people that are pregnant in jail, they go and see the doctor once a month, and he checks the heartbeat and he checks you, and you do get a sonogram. But in our county, we're not allowed pictures, so I wasn't allowed to keep my sonogram picture. of it's a boy, you know. So I had, you know, all these things that I wanted to share with my family or with the baby's dad, because, you know, you want to experience it together. But we would write each other daily, and I would tell him everything. I would even make like little measurements with paper as I got bigger so that he could see how big I was. I was in the dorm with another pregnant girl. We were in the same room together, in the same cell together, and she had 7 kids, so she was very experienced in this. So I did have her to walk me through like what was going on with my body. Is this normal? Is this okay? Because I had never experienced before, and I had no idea what to expect, you know. So she was like my book. She helped me through the whole thing. In our county jail, they do give us sandwiches and fruit for a snack at night, because everybody gets done eating at 5 o'clock. From 5 o'clock at night to 5 a.m. you don't eat. So the pregnant women would get a little snack. And I can remember the nurses, they were great. The officers were great with me. And I don't know if it's because I was so young and they felt bad for me because they knew my situation. They knew my case. They knew that I was pregnant. And they got to know me because I was there. I did my whole 9 months there. So the officers that were on, you get to know them. You know, there are a lot of crooked officers, but there are a lot of really good officers. I was blessed enough to have a lot of good ones. So they would help me out. The nurse, she would get me like cream for my belly. She would like sneak me cream so that I, you know, because I was starting to get stretch marks and I wasn't on the street, so I couldn't get any cocoa butter or anything that pregnant women get when they're pregnant. So the nurse would sneak me like little creams and little things like that to, you know, help me through my pregnancy. I know that while I was in jail pregnant, we had 3 hurricanes. It was in 2004 when the 3 hurricanes back to back came through. So let me tell you what that was like being I was pretty far in my pregnancy because I was big. And so after the hurricane came and we had no water or no electricity, they had generators on, but we still had no water for like 3 days. I'm in a cell with another pregnant girl, and guess what? We're 2 pregnant women who have to pee every 5 minutes, but we can't flush the toilet. But we're locked in this cell with urine in the toilet. That was a tough situation to go through. You know, the whole world was going through a tough situation at that time, but being pregnant, locked in a cell, and not being able to flush the toilet with 2 pregnant girls was very difficult. I also caught staph infection while I was in jail, and I couldn't even walk on my leg. They couldn't give me strong medication because I was pregnant, so they were giving me amoxicillin for staph infection, and it took forever I was in so much pain. I still have a little scar on my leg from it, but thank God, you know, I was scared that I didn't really understand everything, and I was scared, what if it gets to my baby, or all these different things that I went through in jail being pregnant. There's plenty, and I know I'm probably forgetting them right now, but I know that having my baby there, it was a comfort to me because I felt like I wasn't going through it alone. And he actually it's like after a couple months of crying, it was like, okay, Jody, you have a child inside of you, and you have got to be strong. You have got to fight this, and you cannot lay down and just give up on life. You have got to fight this case, and you have got to get up, and you have got to be a mom to this baby. So he gave me strength while I was going through the situation I was going through. I would go to court date after court date, and I would just be praying, Lord, just let today be the day that I go home. Let me go home. You know, I kept praying, believing that I would go home to have this baby, that I wouldn't have to have him there. I remember going to a bond hearing and them denying me for my bond hearing, and the victim's family being in the courtroom and clapping because I got denied. I completely have sympathy for that family because I don't want anybody to think that I didn't have sympathy for what that family was going through. They didn't know the whole story. They didn't know everything. They just, you know, you hear one thing, I actually know the situation because a few years ago, my cousin, the same thing happened. So I understand the anger towards everybody that's there. I would get denied, everything would get denied. So, you know, I would have to go back to my cell, and the stress, the worry, the I'm never coming home. Sometimes it got too much, but then it was like, okay, I can do this. I have a baby inside of me. I have to be strong. Let's talk about when I went into labor. When I went into labor, I had no idea that I was in labor. I went to one of the girls in the pod and was telling her how I was feeling this back pain, how I was feeling like all these different things, and she's like, you need to tell the officer you're in labor. And I was like, really? Because it wasn't really that painful. It was just kind of a dull pain. She was like, no, that's the beginning of labor. So I went to the officer, and probably, I don't know, half hour later, they took me up to the infirmary, where at this point it really was hurting. And I sat in the infirmary for, I don't even remember how long, but it was a few hours until somebody could take me to the hospital. At this point, I am like terrified because I am fixing to have a baby. I was in extreme pain. They had me on a bed in the infirmary. I wasn't allowed to take any pain medicine. I wasn't allowed to have an epidural because they don't provide that for inmates. Well, at least in my jail, they don't provide that for inmates. A few hours later, I go to the hospital. Now, I have to go to the hospital in handcuffs. I wasn't shackled and all that, but they had to handcuff me. I'm having contractions and I'm handcuffed, and walking through the hospital, I was humiliated. Like, they did give me a wheelchair and I got to sit down, but I'm in like my county blues. I'm not in no real clothes. I'm in county blues and I'm handcuffed, and I'm being pushed through the hospital. So everybody's looking at me, and at this point, I didn't really care because I had been incarcerated for almost a year now, and it was like, okay, you know, I got used to the shameful look that people give you when you're incarcerated. I remember putting on the hospital gown, getting in the bed, and being handcuffed to the bed. I was handcuffed to the bed for hours in labor until the nurse finally said, you have got to unhandcuff her. She cannot deliver this child handcuffed to a bed. Like, the nurses were getting mad. They're like, no, this can't happen. And at this point, I had nobody there with me. It was just me and the guard. She wasn't a mean guard, but she went by the rules. Like, it was the rules that no family could come. Then that means no family could come. Hours passed, and 6 o'clock shift change. So 6 a.m. Christmas morning, an angel came on shift, and she looked right at me and she said, Bruno, where are your family? And I was like, give me the phone. So I called my mom, my dad, and my aunt. They all were able to be in the room for the last 3.5, 4 hours of labor. I was able to touch my family. Now, I had not been able to hug my family because in county jail, it's through glass when you do visitation. So I wasn't allowed to hug my family until that day. So it was just emotional for all of us. Like, you know, you don't see your dad cry every day. It's not every day you see your dad cry, but when you see your dad cry because he's there and he gets to hug you, and you know, it's just a lot of emotion that was going on that day. And the officer, like, I am so thankful for her. I actually got the opportunity to tell her a few years ago. I seen her and I got to say thank you. Thank you for what you did that day. It's awesome. And it was her, she had no children, so it was her first time ever watching somebody give birth. So it was an experience she never forgot either. I remember finally delivering my son, and my mom actually got to cut the cord and everything. So I remember just looking at him and just like my baby, and not knowing like what the future held, but knowing that I didn't want to take my eyes off him because I knew that they were going to take him from me. I still at this point didn't know how long I was going to do in in prison. I had signed a plea agreement probably a month prior to going into labor. It was an open plea from 0 to 10 years. When you go in front of the judge, you get to plead your case, and they can sentence you anywhere from time served to 10 years in prison. At that point of delivering my child, I had no idea what the future held. This is really hard to talk about. No matter how many times I tell the story, no matter how many times I think about it, it's hard to tell. It's one of the hardest things I ever went through in my life. Like, the trauma that happens when a mother and a child are separated is something that I don't wish upon anyone. I was so tired giving labor for 24 hours that as much as I wanted to hold my baby and just stare at him, I couldn't keep my eyes open. So it was 24 hours later, the new officer came on and she's like, okay, it's time to go. And I remember just sitting in the wheelchair and just saying goodbye to my son. And just crying. Like, I didn't want to let him go. This is so hard, no matter how many times I tell the story. It is so hard because that pain that you feel, I just remember saying goodbye and kissing him on the forehead, handing him to the nurse, and crying all the way back to the van, all the way back to the jail, not knowing when I'd be able to see him, not knowing any of this. Walking back into the pod that day, when everybody's like wanting to make sure you're okay, are you okay? And it's like, no, I'm not okay. I just gave my baby away. And I am thankful because my mom took my son. So I knew where my son was going. Like, some women, they don't know where their kid's going because they're going to DCF. They don't have family. And I just thank God for my family. I called my mom like every 30 minutes, like, what's he doing? What's he doing? My mom's like, Jody, he's sleeping. But I wanted to know everything. I didn't want to be out of the loop. I didn't want him to blink without me knowing. And so I would lay in bed and I would cry and I would cry. And you know, you're in county jail and you don't have the luxury of your home and privacy to take care of yourself. And anybody that knows, after you give birth, you know, your breast hurt from milk, and it was just a reminder every time that my child was hungry and I wasn't there to feed him. I would have to put pads, maxi pads in my sports bra just to keep from leaking all over me. They gave me like a little spray bottle to clean myself with, but it was so hard because I was in jail and I didn't have the comfort of my home. I didn't have my baby, and I didn't know when I would have my baby. I do want to say that the officers and everybody were very considerate to what I was going through. You know, you hear a lot of stories, you know, of the bad part of it, but there are good people that work in corrections. So 2 months later, I go for sentencing. Now, I have signed the plea of accessory after the fact to armed robbery, and it's an open plea from 0 to 10. And I'm believing to go home so that I can be a mother to my child, because at this point I'm going through postpartum, I'm going through depression, I wanted medication. I was over myself. Like, I did not want to deal with life without my child. Standing in front of the judge, and the judge is, I'll never forget that day. He said, I do not believe that you are a threat to society. I believe you are in fear for your life. I believe this and I believe that. But you participated in an armed robbery. Someone's life was taken. 10 years. It was like, bam. And I can just remember going, no. And just screaming in the courtroom as loud as I could. Like, if you were on the outside of the courtroom, you probably heard me scream that day. And all I could think about, no, I can't do 10 years. I can't do 10 years. I can't be away from my baby for 10 years. My family was screaming. It was like a Lifetime movie, I promise you. And I can remember the guard trying to do my fingerprints, because after you've been sentenced, they fingerprint you. And I was like, no. I did not want him to fingerprint me, because I felt like, okay, now this is real. Like, he just fingerprinted me. This is real. It was the hardest thing I ever did. 10 years. My child, 85% in Florida. So my child, all I kept thinking is, he's going to be 8 years old. 8 years old when I get out. I felt so much pain that day. My family. I just felt like I was never coming home. I felt like 10 years was never coming home. I felt like my life would be over. In county jail, it's through glass, so I didn't get to hold my son again for 8 months. He was 8 months old once I got settled into the prison, and I was able to have contact visitation. And so I got to hold my son when he was 8 months old, and my mom brought him faithfully every 3 weeks until I came home. So my baby, he knew me. He knew I was mom. I remember we would catch lizards and frogs at visitation. Like, I mean, that was our time. Even though I was terrified of frogs and lizards, he broke that. He's 14 years old now. When I got out, he was 8.5 years old, and today we have a bond. We are together. He plays baseball. He just started high school. Like, he's a good kid. Like, he grew up and he's been through a lot. Like, his mom and his dad. Now, his dad ended up with 12 years. And so he didn't get out till he was 10. But so he grew up with my mom and dad being his parent, and I am so thankful that he had them. I don't even really know how to end this video, but I just feel like, you know, sometimes we judge people. I judge people, we judge people, and we never really know what they go through. I know that I am who I am today. I'm a strong woman today because of what I had to go through. And I wish that I could take that night back so many years ago. And I pray for the victim's family every day. They will find forgiveness and peace. I don't even know how to end this, so I'm just gonna say goodbye, guys.
You guys, that was so hard to watch, and that was even harder to edit, and it was probably very hard for her to film. I know it was. I have never even heard her story like this. We've talked about it, but it's been very hard for her. Even when we were in prison together, it was really, really hard for her to talk about. She has a lot of guilt, if you can't tell. Even though she didn't pull the trigger, she feels for the victim's family. And that shows a lot about her character and who she is as a person. Even though this happened many years ago, she still carries that with her. She's a really good person, you guys. She's a really good person, and now she's out. And she has 2 beautiful babies, her son, and she has a daughter. And she's just like us. She's just trying to make it. Oh, by the way, she also sells paparazzi jewelry. You know, the $5 jewelry pieces? I've gotten some from her too, with the necklaces and the earring. Comes with the earrings and all that. Some of them do. I don't know if they all do. But I will leave her link to that down below. So if you have $5 to spare for a piece of jewelry, go over there, show her some love, and grab you a necklace or some earrings or a bracelet or a ring or something from her. And you can help support her in that way if you want to. Only if you want to, guys. Only if you want to. I can't do anything but respect people who have been through the ringer and come through it the other side and are fighting to have a normal life, to take care of their family, to take care of themselves in the right way. Because I'm here to tell you guys right now, when you get out of prison, it is so easy to go back to your old stomping grounds, your old situations, your old life. It's very hard to get out and get a car and find a job, especially when you've been down for 10 years for something as serious as this. But she's doing it. She spends a lot of time helping others. A lot of time. And I just love her so much. And I want to tell you guys that for all of you guys out there, no matter what you've been through, prison or not, whatever you've been through, we all have a story. Okay, we all do. I'm not a special case. Jody's not a special case. Just because we've gone to prison and done things like that, you know, it's no different than you guys having a struggle with finding a job, or, you know, a house fire, or a storm hitting, or losing a loved one. All of the pain and the struggles are still the same. So for all of you guys that are fighting to get through things that have happened, I want to tell you guys that I'm proud of you and I love you, and we are all in this together. Okay, we are all in this together. All right, guys, you guys don't forget to go and show her some love. Show her some love in the comment section down below. That's my girl. I love her, and y'all are my people, and I love you guys, and bringing y'all together is like almost like a little dream come true for me. So as always, please stop right there. Stop it. Stop. Don't forget to like this video. It's a free way that you can help your girl out. And until next time, I love you guys so very much. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.